Don't miss out on important news. Our videos are being deleted. So if you don't want to be cut off from honest news, take a moment to sign up for our newsletter at newsletter.ntd.com so you don't lose access to NTD. Go to newsletter.ntd.com to sign up for our evening newsletter. James O'Keefe's Project Veritas released a secretly recorded video Tuesday of CNN technical director Charlie Chester. In the video, an undercover journalist asks Chester if CNN engages in propaganda and to explain what propaganda is. Chester responds with a seemingly hypothetical answer, using Congressman Matt Gaetz as an example.
If the agenda, say, is to get Matt Gaetz right now, he's this Republican, he's a problem for the Democratic Party because he's so conservative, right? And he can cause a lot of hiccups in passing of laws. So it would be great for the Democratic Party to get him out. So we're going to keep running those stories to keep hurting him and make it so that it can't be parried and just settled outside of court and if we keep pushing that, it's helping us. That's propaganda. It's helping us in some way.
Though the example may be hypothetical, Gaetz is threatening legal action. A spokesman for Rep. Gaetz said, "In 2 weeks, we've gone from wild allegations of international sex trafficking to watered-down reports about Rep. Gaetz's consensual relationships with adult women. Now we learn that CNN's motivations are to attack a congressman of the United States with self-described propaganda in order to aid and abet the Democratic Party. If CNN had any morals left, the reporters and editors responsible for these propaganda pieces would resign immediately." Rep. Gaetz's office said he and his team sent a legal letter to CNN Wednesday morning, and they're exploring options for further action against the network.
A bipartisan group of 30 Congress members want to repeal a Trump-era cap on state and local tax deductions. Biden's proposed tax hike to pay for his infrastructure plan gives them some leverage. NTD's Melina Weisskopf has the story.
As the Biden administration grapples with how to pay for the proposed $2 trillion infrastructure plan, tax reform is in the spotlight. A bipartisan group of Congress members wants to use the opportunity to repeal the cap for SALT, or state and local tax deductions.
I've said before, no SALT, no deal. Josh says no SALT, no dice. Billy says a lot of things. So we're all saying that this has to be part of the conversation.
New Jersey Congressman Josh Gottheimer said people are leaving his state because the taxes are too high. That's why he wants to repeal the Trump-era $10,000 cap on state and local tax deductions.
It's an effort by the federal government to compel voters in states like New Jersey, New York, and California to choose different policies.
He, along with several other caucus members, sent a letter to Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen calling for a SALT cap repeal to be a part of Biden's broader tax and infrastructure plans.
I am open to ambitious revenue raising as part of these bills. If it affects the individual taxes of my constituents, we've got to address SALT as part of that effort.
Some Republicans are joining Democrats in this effort, but urge high-tax states to hold the line taxing their citizens.
But it's not a license for the local municipalities in the states to continue to increase their taxes and abuse the people that they represent. Thank you very much.
Maliotakis said New York City's property tax levy increased over 50% in the past few years.
Well, I was one of the first original advocates of the property tax cap because at Long Island the taxes are so high and all of New York State they're very high.
Saying he'd support state legislation in New York to cap the New York City property tax. People living in high-tax states and who fall within the middle to upper-income classes have been hit the hardest by the SALT cap. And now Biden plans to raise taxes for high-income earners, particularly those making over $400,000 a year. That means middle to upper-income class people could be further impacted by Biden's tax plan if the SALT cap isn't repealed.
So it's clear the Biden administration is going to have to put in a significant amount of effort to negotiate with members of this SALT caucus in order for Congress to write a solid piece of legislation on infrastructure that can actually pass through the House and through the Senate. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
Following the police shooting of 20-year-old Daunte Wright, some are calling to disarm the police. NTD's Christina Kim speaks with a veteran law enforcement officer about what might happen if police are stripped of their weapons.
Former officer Kim Potter shot Daunte Wright after screaming taser 3 times.
She obviously, from the video, thinks that her taser is in her hand, not her firearm. And so then we have the shooting.
But many are wondering, how can an officer confuse a gun for a taser? Sergeant Betsy Brantner-Smith, a 29-year veteran in law enforcement, says this can happen in high-stress situations. An expert on police psychology calls this error slip and capture. Under stress, officers sometimes do exactly the opposite of what they intend. According to protocol, the tasers are on officers' non-dominant side and the service weapons are kept on their dominant side. But officers are trained to draw their handgun more often than stun guns, and their training might take over in high-pressure situations. This mix-up has reportedly happened 16 times in the U.S. since 2001. Brooklyn Center Mayor Mike Elliott suggested officers don't need to be armed with weapons at traffic stops. Smith pushes back against this, saying the mayor doesn't understand policing. For example, one officer in New Mexico was shot in the head during a routine traffic stop before he could even grab for his own gun.
I can guarantee you that you will not find a police officer in the United States who is willing to conduct a traffic stop without having a firearm available.
As for calls to abolish or defund the police, Smith says ultimately it's not police officers who pay the price.
You're hurting ultimately the citizens. And who does it hurt the most? People who live in poorer areas who can't afford good locks, they can't afford private security. They live in areas where they need the police, and the police are not going to be available.
Smith says anti-police sentiment will make officers less willing to engage in dangerous situations. A report from the Law Enforcement Legal Defense Fund shows that after the death of George Floyd, the number of arrests decreased by 42% and murders rose 64% in Minneapolis. Christina Kim, NTD News.
Hi, we're happy to announce that you can also catch us on cable TV now. Millions of households already choose us as one of their trusted news sources, and you can too. You can watch us in Chicago, Washington, D.C., New York, and many other cities as well. And if your system doesn't carry NTD yet, you can just give them a quick call and request NTD on your cable provider. Thank you for watching. See you next time.